Ayatollah. You've heard the word, right? It's all over the news, usually tied to Iran, politics, power. But what does it actually mean? I mean, where does this title even come from?
For a lot of us in the West, especially after the Iranian Revolution back in '79, the word probably conjures up a very specific and, let's be honest, pretty menacing image. It's almost become a shorthand for a certain type of absolute religious rule.
But is that the real picture? Yeah, not even close. Seriously. Behind all the political headlines, there's this incredibly deep history of scholarship, of religious devotion. So let's peel back those layers and get to the heart of it.
Okay, so first up, let's talk about the real sign of God. To get what this title is all about, we have to rewind way back before it ever became a political job title and look at its religious core.
So the term itself, Allah, is Arabic, and it literally translates to sign of God. Just think about that for a second. It was never meant to be a political title. It's an honorific, a title of deep respect for someone's incredible religious knowledge and moral authority.
And here's a key point. You only find this title in Shia Islam. This really goes back to a fundamental split, right after the Prophet Muhammad's death. To put it simply, Sunnis generally felt the community should pick its leaders, but Shias believed leadership belonged to the Prophet's family. And because of that, Shia Islam developed a more organized, hierarchical clerical structure, which is where a title like Ayatollah could even exist. So how do you become an Ayatollah? Well, it's not like you just get an appointment or win an election. No way. It is a grueling, decades-long journey of intense study and spiritual dedication.
Think of it like a clerical ladder. You start as a student, a talebe. After years and years of burying your head in books, studying theology, philosophy, Islamic law, you might make it to the mid-level rank of Hujjatul Islam. Only after you've proven you have total mastery that you can actually interpret Islamic law on your own do you earn the title Ayatollah. And then at the very, very top, you have the grand Ayatollahs, who are spiritual guides for millions of people.
And what's so important to get here is that this was a totally organic process. It wasn't about a committee or a formal decree. A cleric earned this title because their peers, their students, in these great centers of learning like Qom in Iran or Najaf in Iraq, recognized their brilliance. Their reputation was their qualification. Simple as that.
Okay, so everything we've just talked about, that was the norm for centuries. And then 1979 happened. The Iranian Revolution wasn't just a political earthquake. It completely and fundamentally changed what Ayatollah meant to the entire world. This timeline really just lays it all out. You know, back in the early 1900s, the title was super rare, save for just a handful of the most brilliant scholars. Then, bam, the seismic shift in 1979. Ayatollah Khomeini leads the revolution, and suddenly this religious title is welded to the ultimate power of the state. And the story keeps evolving. By 1989, they actually changed the constitution just so a mid-ranking cleric, Ali Khamenei, could take over as the next supreme leader. So what was the intellectual fuel for this revolution? It was a doctrine from Khomeini called Velayat-e Faqih, or Guardianship of the Jurist. The idea is simple but absolutely radical. The most learned religious expert should also be the highest political authority. They should guide the state. And that idea, right there, forever linked the title of Ayatollah to the government of Iran. And this fusion of religion and the state, well, it's created a really complex and often pretty tense situation in the modern world. It has totally transformed what it even means to be an Ayatollah today. One of the biggest, most immediate changes was something scholars call title inflation. What was once this incredibly rare, respected honorific held by just a few, well, it suddenly became a lot more common. Just to put that in perspective for you, before the revolution, you could probably count the number of Ayatollahs on two hands. Today, after the state kind of took over and standardized the seminaries, any cleric who finishes their advanced studies can technically be called an Ayatollah. And the result? The number has just exploded into the thousands. But, and this is a really, really important but, we have to be super clear and distinguish that from the rank of Grand Ayatollah, or Marja. These are the absolute top-tier religious authorities. And that rank is still incredibly rare. We're talking only about 50 of them in the whole world, and their influence is purely spiritual, totally independent of any government.
And this is where things get really fascinating, because it creates this built-in tension, right? You've got these two competing centers of power in Iran. Over in the capital, Tehran, you have the supreme leader. His power comes from the state, the constitution, the military. But then, in the holy city of Qom, you have the traditional grand Ayatollahs. Their power? It's purely religious, based on their scholarship and the trust of millions of followers.
And this tension goes right to the very top. Remember how we said they changed the constitution for the current leader, Ali Khamenei? Well, that's because he was only a mid-ranking cleric when he took power. He wasn't a grand Ayatollah. So the state had to use all of its resources, the media, money, the security forces, to basically build up his religious credentials and promote him. You can probably guess that move did not go over well with the traditional scholars in Qom.
And look, this isn't just some abstract academic debate. We've seen it play out in real life. The scholars in Qom have always prized their independence. Take the massive protests during the Green Movement in 2009. The government was desperate for the Grand Ayatollahs to endorse the election results. But what happened? Most of them refused. It was this powerful, silent protest that showed exactly where they stood, independent from the state.
So at the end of the day, what's the big takeaway here? It's that there really is no single Ayatollah anymore. The title now has two totally distinct meanings. On one hand, you've got the purely religious scholar, whose authority comes from knowledge and respect. And on the other, you've got a political figure, whose authority is backed by all the power of the Iranian state. And they are absolutely not the same thing. So we've seen this incredible journey from a sign of God to a symbol of the state. It's a fascinating, complicated transformation, and it leaves us with a huge question to think about. When a title that's supposed to signify spiritual authority becomes the ultimate source of political power, what does that mean for the future of both faith and the state itself?